Joining me now in a TV exclusive, Mark Zayon, attorney for Officer Ed Nero, Mike Belsky, attorney for Lieutenant Brian Rice, and Catherine Flynn, attorney for Officer Garrett Miller. Great to see you all.
Thanks for having us.
Your clients have been through quite an ordeal, and I'm sure you're very relieved that the charges are now officially dropped, but I want to ask you about Marilyn Mosby. There is a push to have her disbarred. Do you believe she ought to be?
I think there's a process for the Attorney Grievance Commission to respond to the complaint that's been filed, and ultimately it's up to the Court of Appeals to make that kind of decision, but I certainly think it's appropriate for the Attorney Grievance Commission to respond to the complaint that has been filed and investigate this.
You think it was that bad?
Yes.
Why?
From the very beginning of the prosecution of this case, we've been concerned about the motivation behind the prosecutor's actions and whether or not there was ever probable cause to proceed. As you know, they relied on a grand jury indictment where they claimed that they properly presented evidence and that probable cause was found. We actually made a request to have that entire proceeding recorded, which was denied, because we had concern from the very beginning about what information the prosecutor's office was actually going to present to the grand jury.
Because that's one of the questions, Mark, is whether, apart from maybe disregarding some of the evidence, whether this is a prosecutor who was hell-bent on getting a certain result no matter where the evidence took her.
Right. Well, it seems like she started with a theory that she was going to indict these officers, no matter what the evidence showed. She did no investigation. The Baltimore City Police Department did a phenomenal investigation. Their investigation showed there was no wrongdoing.
That's why she's ripping on the cops there. That's why she's ripping on them.
Exactly. And when she gave her initial speech at the War Memorial, she talked about the extensive, in-depth investigation that her office did in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department in Baltimore City. None of which, it seems, has happened. There was no indication of no evidence, no indication of any investigation that was done at all.
So that was bull?
It's a farce.
So what did she indict these cops based on?
Well, she wanted to indict them. She indicted them on no evidence. There was no evidence. I think she was hopeful that evidence would develop, but as the case went on, it turned out that not only did evidence not develop, there was negative evidence, exculpatory evidence that came out.
Well, that's the thing. Piece by piece, the case started to fall apart, Mike, including the knife. You know, first she said these cops had no business arresting Freddie Gray. They claimed he had an illegal knife on him, but she said the knife was legal. And then you guys came out and said that knife was not legal, and she said, never mind, the knife has nothing to do with the case.
So that's a problem. It's a problem when any law enforcement officer, be it prosecutor or police officer, arrests and charges people without probable cause. That is a problem. That's what our clients were charged with. They didn't do it. And now also we have a prosecutor who's done that to our clients. So now what? They've been charged, all three of our clients, with crimes that they didn't commit, crimes that we believe were lacking in probable cause. So who will be accountable for that? By her very theory of the prosecution against our officers, somebody must be accountable if there's no probable cause and they were arrested.
How scary is that? I mean, talk about that for Brian Rice. How scary was it for him to be on the receiving end of that?
Imagine that. You spend your life as a law enforcement officer devoted to your community, devoted to helping people, devoted to the criminal justice system, and then you have to watch the criminal justice system turn its back on you and fail you. And fortunately...
And then even when there was an acquittal, when there was a hung jury and so on, she still would not let go and kept saying she was going to get justice for Freddie Gray. Not just justice, which is her job. I mean, what was the reaction when you heard her say that?
I was offended the first time I heard her speaking about this matter, and it seemed very clear that she was speaking to a certain segment of the community, but she was not speaking
to... This is your moment.
Our time is now was one of her hashtags. I mean, she was clearly politicizing this opportunity as opposed to doing her job.
That's what Mike Nifong did down in Durham, North Carolina.
Yes.
You see similarities between these two cases?
I think there is a parallel. And it's, from our point of view, I think it's an abuse of the process. I mean, the question becomes, who is policing the prosecutor when their efforts are veiled in secrecy, and they can hide behind the secrecy of the grand jury and hide behind the work product of their investigation, when in fact what's become clear that they never had a case to begin with. And, we are all grateful that Judge Williams properly evaluated the evidence and found that
But who knows? Who knows? That's the scary thing. But I have to ask you, because a lot of people out there watching saying a man is dead. and there was no reason for somebody, even if he was suspected on a drug crime, to wind up dead in the back. You know, the cops didn't buckle him in. They were supposed to buckle him in. And you know that many people feel that it would have been justice to have the cops face charges. Go ahead.
So there are accidents that happen, and when there are accidents, that doesn't mean that there's criminal liability. So this is a criminal charge. She's a prosecutor. And I was a prosecutor. When you're a prosecutor, you investigate, you follow the evidence, you go where the evidence leads you. You take your time, you don't rush to indict.
So you have no problem with the internal review going on at the police department? You agree that's appropriate?
There should be an internal review, absolutely.
It's just the criminalization of a questionable police officer's police action that you object to.
Correct. And I don't think the internal investigation will show that there was any wrongdoing by the officers. I think everything that they did, and I'll speak specifically with regard to Officer Nero, but everyone else as well, every decision that they made was appropriate within the general orders. It was done with officers' discretion for the safety of the people involved.
How have their lives changed?
Enormously. I mean, can you imagine you go from a private citizen, from being somebody who is out there helping the community, but in privacy, to being splashed all over the news, your mugshot being put on the local news every night. It's devastating. It's devastating to my client. It's devastating to their clients. It's devastating to the other 3 officers. It's a horrific thing to have to be put through.
And it's not over yet, because the review is ongoing, and what will happen to Ms. Mosby. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.